Hi everyone, today I'm going to talk about my experience with rehab and how you can make rehab work for you. Statistically speaking, rehabs do not work. Rehabs do not get people sober, nor do they keep people sober. The stats are not good. And I knew that going in. I'd already done AA passionately for years and years and years. I'd had a lot of sober time. This was a relapse. I was under no illusion. I'd heard the stories from people in AA about how they had gone to rehab and it hadn't worked, and then they went to AA and that worked for them. And I was like, well, if AA didn't work, rehab's definitely not going to work. I was skeptical about it. But I made it work for me, and I haven't picked up a drink since. I'm not going to say that that's because of rehab, but rehab did work for me at that time, and it was the thing that I needed, and it was the respite. I decided going in that I was going to use that space and that facility to aid my recovery that I was going to do by myself on my own. I was going to find a way of recovering, and I was going to use that time out to do that basically. And I was going to use the people there. I was going to use the other inhabitants and the facilitators and everything that was on offer. I was going to use it to my advantage, and that was kind of the expectation I had when I went in. You have to remember that addiction and alcoholism, they are not understood. Nobody understands them. If you're an ex-addict or an ex-alcoholic, you will have some things to say about how to recover. You'll have some things to say about what addiction is and what alcoholism is, and that's your personal truth and your experience. However, you get two addicts in the same room, their experiences are different. Their definition of what addiction is and what it means and how it affects them is different. The medical community do not have a consensus on addiction or alcoholism. They have a consensus on some of the factors about it, but it's a vague subject. It's almost metaphysical. I knew that going into rehab, I was not going to be learning anything about addiction, all right, that I didn't already know. For one, I know what's written about addiction and alcoholism. I know it's in the AA book. I know what the medical profession say about it. I know what the neurological explanations are, the hypotheses and the theories. Coming at it from any angle, a spiritual angle, a metaphysical angle, a medical angle, whatever. I know what it says out there because I've done the research on it. I also know what my experience is with it and my opinions, and I also know what a vast bunch of people, their experience and opinions are about it as well, because I've spent a lot of time around those people. So I knew that the rehab facilitators, they weren't going to teach me anything, nor were they going to be able to provide me with some sort of solution, right? And I think if you go in there assuming that the facilitators of a rehab are going to know more than you about your addiction, your alcoholism, or alcoholism in general, addiction in general, you're going to be very disappointed because they don't know. And most of them are ex-addicts themselves, right? Ex-alcoholics. So it's not like they don't know anything. Or, you get ones that are from a medical background or a therapeutic background, a therapy background. So it's not like they're completely ignorant, but they don't know a lot. And it's not arrogant to realize that. It's important to realize that. And you might be thinking, well, why am I going into rehab then? What's the point? There is a point, and knowing that you are not going to be helped is a good starting point. And you can use that rehab for a space in which to recover, in which you can get charge over your recovery, right? In my rehab group, there are only a small number of us, and since coming out, everybody is relapsed. A lot of them relapsed in there, right? And the rest of them relapsed when they left. and there's me and a couple of other people who haven't. And I met a lifelong best friend in there. And the thing that we both have in common is that we took charge of our own recovery. We didn't expect to be fed recovery. We didn't expect to be given the solution from the rehab. We got out of there and we found our own paths. And that's how you need to think of it. You need to be planning and preparing for when you come out. I went in there, I talked honestly, I listened. There was candid discussions. I admitted to things that I'd never told anyone before. I got everything off my chest. You know, it was group therapy. I made bonds with people. And that sort of routine and respite from the usual routine, getting up every morning, because it was a day rehab, so I came home at night, getting up every morning, getting there for 9 o'clock. It was like going to school, looking forward to seeing my friends. We'd get lunch provided for us, there was activities. You know, it was like being a kid. And I regressed, and I was a kid. I let myself be a kid for a little bit. I let myself enjoy the colouring and the acupuncture and the group music sessions, and having my lunch and seeing my friends and complaining and moaning and getting everything off my chest. It was aligned. Just being aligned for the first time in such a long time, admitting that I had that problem, and so did everybody else. Throwing tantrums, you know, I remember saying, I know that I'm going to drink when I come out of here. I know that's going to happen again. Nobody can stop me. And I was angry, and the facilitators argued with me and I argued back, and I embraced how I really felt. I allowed myself to be mad and sad and not okay. Just allowing myself some time to not be okay, and that was okay. And what that did, it gave me the space to work out what I needed to do when I had left. And the contingency plan that I came up with was right. I looked up which meetings, because I was actually part of, actually was going to CA meetings, Cocaine Anonymous, because I liked the CA vibe, I liked the community, and a couple of CA people came into the rehab and gave us a talk, and I was really inspired by them, and I chose one of them as my sponsor, and I had him lined up for when I came out. And the lady I met in there, who became my lifelong friend, found out she lived just around the corner from me. So we made a plan, like, we're gonna go to this meeting every week together. After the meeting, we're going to go back to her house, have a cup of tea, and we had a routine together. And we started to talk. When we came out, we started to talk. There was no shame. We knew everything about each other already. You know, I'd seen her crying, she'd seen me crying. I knew all of her dirty laundry, she knew all of my dirty laundry, and we would sometimes just sit in silence on her sofa at 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, just because we didn't want to be on our own. And it was healing. It was like a sister. It was like, I can just be myself in front of her, she gets it. And we shared very, very intimate details with each other, and we built that bond. And you know, she decided that she wanted to do X, Y, and Z. She wanted to have this kind of counselling, get this kind of job, get into her fitness, this, that, and the other. You know, she decided what her path was, and she discussed it with me, and I decided that this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to get fit as well. I wanted to do a different type of therapy, and you know, we sort of figured things out together, but separately as well, parallel. So there was no dogma, there was no sense of, well, everything we've learned in this rehab, this is kind of what we believe in now, as if we're part of some sort of religion. It wasn't like that. You know, it's what I'm trying to say is that you need to figure out what you're going to do. You need to know what you're going to be doing when you leave the rehab. You need to create that space for yourself where you're going to be safe and you can process. You can't go in there thinking that somebody's going to wave a magic wand and that you're going to be cured. And also, you do not need to take on board everything that people say just because they've either been sober longer than you have, or you know, they've never had a drinking problem, or they're a facilitator at this place. There was people in that rehab who they'd been there for longer than me, they'd been sober for longer than me, and they weren't facilitators, but they were kind of helping out on a voluntary basis. And they were trying to tell me how I should run my own recovery, and I wasn't having it. And I saw some of the people in my rehab group get sucked into that and think, well, because they've been sober for a while, I need to listen to them. It's like, no. Like, all of those people who were trying to tell us what to do, thought they knew better because they had a bit more sober time, all of them have relapsed. I think all of them. I'm not saying that to gloat. I'm saying that your experience and you knowing what's going to work for yourself, getting really honest with yourself, getting really aligned, like, what do I need? What is it about me? Why am I doing this? It's a personal thing that's just as valid as what somebody else is saying about themselves. Just because they've been sober for a little bit longer, it doesn't mean that what they're saying is going to apply to you. So that's what I would say as well, like, going in, just, yes, take some advice, try it out, but do it loosely. Just find your own way. Because if you're following somebody's regimen, when you get out, you're not going to be able to maintain that because it's not yours. It hasn't come from you. It hasn't been given to you. So rehab was a really, really good experience for me, but it was in the context of now's the time for me to find my own feet, my own voice, get in touch with myself, get aligned, admit to how I'm really feeling, find a path that suits me, and something that I can carry on with when I get out of here. That's what it was about. And same for my friend as well, who hasn't relapsed. And I think if we treat rehabs a little bit more like that, where it's about learning how to take charge of your recovery, learning how to hear the opinions of other people but not get too sort of attached to them, maybe take the advice of other people but in the view that if it doesn't work for you, you can switch to something else and that's okay. Like, I think that's going to be better for people from what I've seen, from what I've experienced, and from what I've seen and what I've heard people say about rehabs. I hope that was helpful to somebody, and if you are going into rehab, good luck, and just use it as your place to find your own feet with your recovery and get out of it as much as you can. It's not about black and white thinking, like these people either know everything or they know nothing. It's like they're human beings and they're dealing with something very confusing, which is alcoholism and addiction. Nobody really gets it. Nobody really sees the whole picture of what it means and what the solutions are. So you just have to try and keep a balanced view as much as you can. Thank you for listening.